Welcome to Tech Simplified, and my name is Sly Gittens. And today we're continuing the Women in Tech podcast series. I have the one and only Sonny Patel, and she is going to rock your world about her background. So I'm going to share a little bit, just a little bit about her background. I don't want to steal your thunder, Sonny. She started her way up from an entry-level position as a product developer to a senior program manager. She started her career at Microsoft. Sonny also has an MBA from the University of California at Berkeley and a master's degree in computer science from Texas A&M University. Sonny, can you give a little bit more detail of your history? And again, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you and share your beautiful story.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. About my background, um, you know, time flies. I can't believe it's been 20 years since I started my first job in tech, right after my getting a graduate degree at Texas A&M in computer science. I joined Dell, and the first 2 years of my career, I was a developer. And this was early 2000s, and around that time, this new discipline of being a product manager was something that Microsoft introduced. I was very intrigued by it when I first heard about it. And so that's where I wanted to go next. I applied, got in, very thrilled about it. And that's what got me over to Seattle area back in 2005. Worked at Microsoft for about 8 years. Like you mentioned, joined as an entry-level product manager, grew within that role. And after about 8 years, joined Amazon, which seems very much like a loop that most folks in Seattle area do, move from Microsoft to Amazon. Work there, joined as a product manager, and I can get into it later if needed. Completely by accident, moved into a cross-functional leadership role. And I stayed there for about 5 years, and then jumped to another company called LivePerson that built a lot of conversational AI products before joining Socotra a year ago. And Socotra is re-envisioning how we create and manage insurance policies throughout their life cycle.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for sharing that overview. And it's great. It's cool how your background and what you did and how you kind of stumbled into certain roles. It's funny how life works, right? And that's something I like to share on this podcast is sometimes your education might not open the door that you thought it was, but sometimes it ends up being better than what we thought it was going to be, right? So that was pretty cool. So let's tap into that a little bit more. We talked a little bit about your educational path, right? But did it prepare you for your roles at Dell, Microsoft, and Amazon and what you're currently doing now? Can you kind of talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I don't think I could have at all envisioned the career I ended up having while I was still at school. It always felt that everything I was doing at the time prepared me for my next step.
Yeah.
So when I go back to school, I think school prepared me for my first job.
Yeah.
And I think there were so many other experiences, so many other opportunities that I would attribute to where I ultimately landed up. My first role as a developer at Dell, I tie it back to getting my master's degree at Texas A&M because Dell was one of the employers that would hire from Texas A&M. We're talking about back in 2003, and Dell was at the very top of their game, number one computer maker in the world at that time. They were one of the companies that would visit the career fair at Texas A&M, and that's how I got in touch with them. They would tap into some of the students, the interview opportunities. My first introduction to Dell was through a summer internship.
That's great, man. I like how you unpack that. Like, I think you said it well because the same thing for me. My first degree, went to University of Buffalo, majored in marketing and IT. and helped me get my first like internship. I remember I worked at the Office of Emergency Management in Brooklyn as a network engineer / help desk engineer, support rep. And I did that for a bit and helped me get there. But when I got that role, I got to get the hands-on experience that I wanted. I also got to realize that I really don't like network engineering, even though I did that when I was in school.
Right.
And I kind of like the help desk role a little bit more. And everyone who's a network engineer usually started off as a help desk role. So it's almost like I took a step back, but I found where I like to be in tech, right? I can get technical. I used to front end code and all those things, but I found that I'd rather just talk to people, understand the problems, do the strategy, and then use technology more as a way to solve problems versus to be the technologist who implements it, right? But I remember just the beginning, just trying to figure it out. And I knew like the University of Buffalo, there's a company called Ingram Micro, and I knew since that was in Buffalo, at least the sales arm, the tech arm was in Buffalo, I had a higher chance to go there. And I was able to kind of use that to learn everything in a tech distributor where you get to work with Amazon, AWS, and then being in Buffalo, it's way different than being in Seattle, right? Because there's no top companies there really, right? Ingram Micro was, to me, for tech, was one of the best ones to work at, unless you're working in a bank like M&T, right? So that was kind of cool. So I'm glad that you shared that. And then also, like, I also like how you figured out, like, you know what? I'm here. I know that my college also recruits from Dell. So if you're working backwards and listening to this right now, figure out the school that you're at, who goes there usually, right? Because that is someone maybe you need to model yourself for your first job, right? And then if you realize your school doesn't have the candidates that you want, then you got to look outside using tools like LinkedIn, social media. You can use X or Twitter.com and so on and so forth to reach people that you want to meet. But those are the things I love how you did that, how you worked backwards and kind of figured it out. But you're right. As you get older, like, the stuff I did in college, a lot of the tech stuff no longer even valid. Like, yeah, it's there, but it's kind of old and dated now, right? So if I kept using that as my, baseline, then I wouldn't be where I am today. So that's great. One thing that actually kind of pivots right into our next question perfectly. As a leader in AI and technology, what unique challenges have you faced as a woman in this field, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, I think, well, facing challenges, definitely not unique to being a woman.
Okay.
I think in tech industry, it might seem a little bit more challenging only because despite all of us wanting to have more women in tech, I think the tech workforce, we still only have about 25%. So it's predominantly still very much male dominated. I think that might seem like we have less of a network from a gender perspective. However, it's like I have to say, I feel very fortunate to have had several people who sponsored me and my career, and without whose help, I wouldn't be where I am today. Um, I I think if you're talking about what specifically challenges about um, not just in tech, but just managing career, you and I talked about, uh, kids before we got started. I have three children, all of whom at this point are below the age of 7. So I think that balance, striking that balance, was something that all worked out now for sure. But at the time, um, definitely was nerve-wracking, right? Because it wasn't clear what the impact to my career would be. Again, looking back, luckily, I don't think, if anything, it's probably helped me be more productive and more efficient with my time. But going through those experiences, taking that break from work, I think that those were some of the more nerve-wracking experiences. But all in all, I feel very lucky for having the opportunities I've had.
That's great. And I think you're right. And when I state that question, that affects men as well, and as well as women, right? And you said, like, even though we had a lot of advancements, it would be great to see even more. Luckily, like working at Microsoft, a lot of our leadership is women, which is great, because a lot of companies I went to, you didn't see as men, right? Here is you see minorities, women, black, white, Asian, whatever. It's all together here. And you
Right.
got different various of leadership, which I think is pretty cool because I find when you have a more diverse culture, that's when you solve problems more creatively, right? If you got someone who got an IT and marketing background, we're gonna solve things IT and marketing. What about the finance challenge? You might slide, your product is not good, dude. Like, of course we can't sell it, right? Right? You're gonna have different people bringing those solving those problems. And sometimes I find even ladies, they can multitask. I find like even more efficiently, right? So, right, you got different things that I found in my career, especially even doing this podcast series, is the amount of like I'm in part of the Women Tech meetup in Buffalo, and it's crazy, like how vibrant everyone is helping and working with each other and helping them solve problems, and it's just the community is pretty cool. So I'm glad you enjoyed the way, I mean, enjoying your time in the field and giving back as well too. So thank you. So my next question kind of goes into it transitions successfully into a cross-functional leadership role. And how has this position enabled you to empower, other people in this role, from women, men, young girls, you name it? Like, how has that helped?
I can tell a little bit of story of how I got into this
Yeah,
type of role, and then
yeah,
definitely answer the question. So, uh, completely by accident.
yeah,
So as I mentioned, I joined Amazon as a product manager,
yeah,
and a year in, uh, my counterpart, engineering leader, took on a new role, and we were both at that point reporting to a VP who was looking to hire a replacement for the engineering manager role. And in the interim, he said, "Hey, could you just step in to help manage the team while we make this hire?" And Amazon has a setup, and different companies do it differently, but Amazon has what they call single-threaded owners, which is essentially for a specific product, uh, leaders that manage product management, engineering, QA, design, and they more than any other company I've seen, they push that responsibility down as low in the hierarchy, organizational hierarchy as possible. So that is what I stepped in to do.
yeah,
And I thought it was so much fun because until then, as a product manager, my job was to define what to build, why we're building, design it the right way, work with different stakeholders to make sure we are, you know, hitting the goals of what this product or feature is supposed to do.
yeah,
But once I defined that, then, it was essentially negotiating with the engineering leader to ensure that the right folks are working on it. And now that I was managing this team, I could make the decisions end to end to launch the features to the customers. So I thought that was very impactful, very fun. So about a month in, I was having a one-on-one with my manager at the time, and I said, "Hey, I'm really enjoying this role. This is incredibly fun." And he was like, "Do you just want to continue to do this? um, you know, Less work for him. He doesn't have to hire now." And I thought that was a great opportunity. I mean, talk about happy accidents. So that's what got me started into that role. And to me, the way it happened definitely was a low risk way of getting started because I was helping out by taking on this role. So let's say even if I had failed, you know, I'm I would still get credit for helping out. So it gave me that risk-free option to try it out and see how I like it. And to then, going back to me saying having that sponsorship, getting the opportunity to actually do it uh, was incredible. So my advice would be say yes, take a chance on those opportunity, even if they might seem like outside of your wheelhouse, outside of your comfort zone. Um, and I mean, there is this notion of a one-way door or two-way door. Again, I'm using Amazon terminology, which is essentially decisions that are easy to undo versus difficult to undo. This was very much a one-way door for me because I stepped in to help, and if I hadn't liked it or if I ended up not being good at it, it was very easy for me to just, let somebody else tackle that. So I think that especially when such opportunities come your way, my recommendation is go for it. It's definitely paid out for me.
And I think the happy accidents are kind of the best ones, right? I went to school for tech, and I was going to be IT, guy, like network engineering, telecommunications. And then I ended up taking my marketing class. I'm like, man, this is easy, man. This is kind of fun too. And I'm like, what if I got a degree in both? Like what if I did marketing and IT? You never really see no one do it. I remember my guidance counselor or career counselor in college, like, that's not a good idea. No one pairs those two things together. I'm like, well, I kind of like both of them and I'm paying for it. So I'm gonna do it, So I think it's cool, right? And then fast forward, it's hard, right? Because when you're a network engineer, they don't care about your marketing class. What are they gonna do with me, right? And then I look for marketing jobs. They didn't care about my tech stuff. So I'm like, man, what do I do, man? And I end up finding like a tech support pre-sales. I didn't know that was a thing, right? And then I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. A little bit too reactive for me. Too like I'm more of a person who I like a job that has a canvas, and it is they say, hey, this is the idea, but you figure out what you got to do to get there. Now I'm not good at roles that kind of predefine everything. It's never been that way, right? So then again, try new roles, try product marketing manager. I did okay in it. It was really good. But then I really like being behind the scenes. Then I went back and doing like a technology consultant role, which was half tech, half sales, right? Then my marketing skills could come in there. Then, luckily one of the guys I met that worked at Microsoft when I was at Ingram, I'm like, Sly, you'll be a good partner technology strategist. I'm like, what does that even mean? Yeah, I never heard of this job before. What is a partner technology strategist? There's no way for me to even know what that is. What does that even entail? Realizing I'm doing it now, right, is a technical role, but it's more like a CTO for Microsoft partners, right? Your job is to help them understand what is inside of Microsoft portfolio, where is it market going, and how they can embed it into their services so you can bring them to the market effectively. And then you bring in the subject matter experts like my cloud solution architects, partnership in charge and architects, specialists. So yeah, I can get technical, but I don't have to get 10 layers deep. I got someone else who can do that. I can kind of figure out the plays, and it was cool. It was a happy accident. I just knew that I liked these two things. I actually got to, when I worked with my other PTF before I made the switch, he kind of gave me certain things. How would you handle this? And I would go ahead and do it. So then I knew I kind of like doing it. It's going to be a little bit harder because it's larger accounts, like global accounts, right? But I knew it would be really something fun. And it was like a happy accident, I'm doing it. And there's nothing to prepare me for become a partner technology strategist. There's no degree for that, right? It's just like, and no one knows that you can make a fair amount of money in these type of roles, right? I didn't know a channel engineer existed. These type of, it's more of a trainer role. And fun fact, I was going to be a teacher beforehand, right? So I get to teach partners about technology. And that's why I started my YouTube channel and all those things. So I could find different ways to teach,
right? Yeah.
right? That's a natural fit, right? So these are the things, like, I love that you said sometimes happy accidents. You also said taking on additional responsibility led to something that you didn't even know you liked, which I think is kind of cool. Sometimes I find a lot of people I run into, they say that's not a part of my job. I'm like, okay, that's great. But are those skills you want to develop, right? For me, I want to go on more leadership skills. So I took on leadership roles, find out certain things I didn't like about them. All right, now I know where do I want to be in leadership? How do I want to manage that? But you get to kind of learn without the stress of having a role and having a change. Because I've been there before, became a director of product marketing, did not like it, wasn't a good fit. Not because it was hard, it's boring. I kind of like being with the people and teaching. Like, I was able to do the strategy. I do that for my YouTube channel, but that's good when it's for me. It's not when you got to work with a chief marketing officer and make sure it matches their view, right? Then it's more things there, right? But I had to leave that job and move on, right? If I was able to put that responsibility as maybe, when I was a global partner marketing manager, I would have said, you know what, I don't need to go to that role. Let me do something different, right? So, but your career is kind of cool, man. Sometimes you got to kind of go where it takes you, because sometimes you bring skills. Like, even me become a director of product marketing manager, I got to deal with stress. It was a startup, working all day, different type of cultures. My team was in Israel, right? So working with that type of a background, right? figuring out how, like, they working on Sunday. I'm like, I'm sleeping. This is Sunday. They're like, it's Monday for us. You better get to work, right? It was kind of cool. It prepared me to realize that, maybe I want to be a startup when I just had my daughter, right? It was just when I had my daughter, I didn't realize, how much more work it would be to be a parent and how much more fun I would have preferred to do, like being a dad more than, sometimes going to work, right? I like being with my kids, right? So again, but you had to learn that, you had to experience it. So I'm glad you shared that. So actually, I think you might have shared this already, but this goes into, what drives your passion in tech, right? What kind of keeps the fire burning? You said it's 20 years in. What
Right.
keeps you excited, you know?
Yeah, and I think that has evolved as I've gained more experience and I've both gotten older. Uh, I think I used to be more driven by working on something that was cool
Yeah,
when I started out. So even when I was getting my master's degree, I've worked as a research assistant, and the topic I chose was quantum computing. Very theoretical, more because it sounded cool. Um, Ended up teaching me that I don't like working on theoretical topics. So that was the learning there. Um, I think very much earlier in my career, it was all about what is the cool thing to work on? Let's do that. And now I think that has evolved to what is the most useful thing we can build with technology? And that pushes me more than working something that might be cool or might get a reaction, but ultimately ends up being gimmicky and not really having that much of an impact on our lives, not as attractive as something that you and I is like it'll impact our day to day. I mean, talk about where I am right now, building technology for insurance companies, and each one of us probably is a consumer of multiple insurance
interesting.
products,
Yeah,
right? So I think that I find this very fulfilling.
yeah,
Uh, and especially as we're building stuff and we're talking to these insurance carriers, and these are insurance carriers that, we're customers of,
yeah.
uh, and knowing that, oh, us building this capability in this platform is ultimately going to have this impact on the end users. Um, that's that's become more of a motivating, fulfilling factor.
I don't know that, and I think that's a good shift, right? Because similar, like, I'm like, man, I work at Microsoft. That's great. But what are you doing, right? What am I doing at Microsoft? How am I actually helping the business? Even before my saying I'm jumping. All right, man, we can work on network engineering. That's cool. But heard about this thing called network virtualization. What's that? What's virtualization? Let me go do that. Oh, I see some cloud computing. What's that? That sounds great. Oh, security, bug hunting. Yeah, I'm gonna do that for a bit. Not, this more going off the excitement, the buzzwords, going where the industry is going. But I'm like, all right, why am I doing this? What do I want to get out of it? Why am I doing all these jumps, right? What was I trying to gain? And then, for me, I kind of went to what skills I want to learn in a role. What's my next skills I want to develop in my life, right? And then now I take roles based on that, right? In this role, I'm so used to doing everything myself, right? Even from my YouTube channel, I used to do the editing, the video, and the finding, recruiting, all those things. And even in my life, when it came to being a dad, certain things like from mowing the lawn to doing everything, and you realize that is not scalable at all, right? So then I got a role. The role I do now is impossible to do that. First of all, Microsoft portfolio is too dense for me to be an expert in everything. So I took a job that I had to become a facilitator. And then I was like, what if I could focus on bringing impact during my meeting, like during our podcast sessions right here, really spend time learning about you, your background, and asking questions to really help the audience. I can make videos about things that actually people care about and want to talk about versus doing the editing, versus doing my outreach, right? Certain those things, like what part of the business do I want to work in, even at work, So me switching, taking a role that's big on facilitation, let me be okay of letting it go. Like even now at home, instead of me mowing my half an acre, I hired a person to do that, right? So I can
Right.
take that time back because when I used to do it, it didn't look good. You knew I did it. right? You know, so my neighbor probably was upset why his law looked so bad, right? And it was like $40 to outsource it. So I'm like, wait, what am I doing here, right? So I think sometimes in life you gotta you gotta figure out what's best for you, right? But sometimes you might see a job looks great, but you like insurance. Do I really want to do an insurance? I could be working on AI right now. You can do AI in insurance, right? You can do something like you said, like insurance
There's a
affects
lot of
every
discussion about it.
single person,
Right.
right? From health insurance to your car insurance to like anything you do has some type of insurance in there. And the scale of your impact, instead of being some thousands or hundreds, is millions or billions. Like that's different. That's a good way to look at it. And I hope people who listen to this, no matter what part of your career, you can adopt that. Because sometimes we get these cool tools that you find is like, yeah, I can do AI of a guy doing a running man and someone else. How do people want to use that? It's cool. It's not bad. I'm pretty cool. They made it. It's pretty exciting. But is it going to help a lot of people? And you have to define what you're in the game for, right? So it's pretty cool. I guess this goes in perfectly. You kind of talked about it. Could you discuss some of the innovative projects you led and their impact on a tech ecosystem, or just share a project that you felt that was fulfilling, and why?
Yeah, I can talk about. I can give two examples. One, which is probably the most cutting edge, fun, innovative projects, and this was back when I was at Amazon. I was in the Alexa group, and this was back in 2016, so very early in Alexa life cycle. So there were a lot of capabilities that we were introducing.
Yeah,
Um, and one that I helped launch for Alexa was voice recognition.
yeah,
So one of the known facts, are you Alexa or a
yep.
AIS
Oh, I
user?
love that. I have Alexa. I got Google.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Oh, I got too many of those things probably in my house.
So I think, and typically they're used in a multi-user setting, in a family setting. So the idea was that even with one device, multiple people are talking to Alexa. So over time, for Alexa to recognize that, oh, in this household there are four people, and right now person one is talking to me versus person two. So initially, obviously, she does know who is who, but over time, collect that voice information, start to recognize voices, so that she can personalize the response back. So, for example, I'm a huge Britney Spears fan. So when I say Alexa, play music, for her to understand that, this voice tends to like. Okay. That's
There
Alexa.
you go.
Oh, she's gonna. I should learn to mute her. Alexa, stop.
Perfect.
Uh,
This is right on key.
and also, let's say my husband who listens to more Guster, Weezer,
Yeah,
to when he says play music, to obviously tailor the music choices to his preferences, to
yeah.
then eventually learning to associate a name with the voice and, eventually personalize more experiences, right? So that voice recognition capability was something I helped launch with my team, of course. I thought amazingly fun. Uh, and little details, the amount of time we all spent obsessing about privacy concerns, the experience of um, even asking for consent. How do we get started? Right? I mean, is that okay? Should we have this capability on by default or off by default? Um, just a lot of things that seem obvious now in hindsight, now that the feature is launched and it's been, out in the wild for a number of years, and voice recognition is fairly common right now. But back then, some of those tiny details were non-obvious. I thought that was an amazingly fun project to work on.
No, that sounds amazing, especially someone who uses it, and now kind of being working in a software company directly. I don't realize how long it takes to understand that and how quick, if you don't think about privacy, it won't make it to to become a full product, because a lot of people or companies or buyers, consumers they want to know, where's my data going? If you're collecting my voice, what are you doing with that, right? So I think sometimes we take for granted when we get a good product,
That's right.
and how long it takes, right? And then for me being here now, and especially being on the product marketing side, working with the program managers, working with the product managers, working with the developers, and realizing how much time they're putting in just to get a feature bug, right? And then now actually for the market to understand it, that's a really cool product. And I could tell how those skills are transferable throughout your career, right? Having to have that intricacy, really that's really conversations you need to have with your teams to understand the conversations that is happening through Alexa, right? So it's pretty good. And you see it in everything now. From my TV has Alexa in it to my cameras, right? I'm asking questions, right? So and then you do wonder, like, all right, I took Alexa out of my office or my Google out of my office just in case, it is listening, right? Because you don't know, right? But hearing that, those safeguards are in place makes you feel a little bit more at ease, right? So that's cool.
No, and you
Yeah,
picked up on a really good point, which is
yeah,
people being worried about where is the data going. And I think that that was definitely a huge aspect of how we built that experience and introduced it to any of the users, because I think in general, all of us are okay with sharing information as long as, one, we understand what is the value we get in return, and two, it feels that our information is being collected and used in a transparent way. And
yeah.
we are in control of when we want to share and when we want to stop sharing, or we don't want to share at all. And I think that that was incredibly important. What I think makes a lot of us rightfully nervous is when we feel that there is some information of ours that is being collected and used without our consent or without our
Sure.
knowledge. That seems like a violation of trust, and it makes it more likely that you wouldn't want to use a feature
Correct.
if
And
that
that's
was your
even like the
purpose.
world of AI right now. That's what we're worried about. All right. If I'm using something like 11 Labs, right, and I'm using their voice to create my will they be able to use my voice later, right? When I'm like here, or I'll give you an example. I listen to a lot of rap, R&B. Drake just put out a diss track against who was it again? Kendrick Lamar, right? But he used Tupac's voice, right? It was an AI version of Tupac's voice and Snoop Dogg to do it. And now Tupac's boy, like estate is like, hey, what's going on, right? So that's kind
Right.
of, you're arming AI right now. You're not there. The person not there to protect themselves, right? So now, like the privacy and how's it being used, right? That's problematic, right? Right now, imagine someone scrapes this audio. They have enough audio of me and your voice to use it in different attacks to our children, right, in the future. So even the things I talk to my, I'm a little bit off topic, but talk to my kids, like, and my wife, I'm like, we got to have a safe word, so we know if someone's asking for something, if I know I'm reaching out to Sonny, I'm like, hey, Sonny, hey, you need to donate to Tech Simplified. She didn't know, like, hey, what's the safe word, Sly? Right?
Right.
Oh, you don't know it? Then it's not me, right? So it's kind of, the future we're going into is exciting. And it's also wondering where those privacy now is blurring, right? So it's great to see that, in the beginning of this AI and leveraging voice recognition and, smart assistants, right? It's like the beacon, like it's the beginning. And now it's just getting built on top of it. So it's going to be interesting seeing how privacy evolves. And that's really important. We could spend the whole hour talking about that alone, right? And more.
Uh, Very true. Huge topic, and also, as you mentioned, the whole topic of copyright,
Yeah.
uh, especially with this whole Gen AI, I mean,
It's insane, right? Like I can literally scrape an interview right now and tell ChatGPT to make me a script and it'll do it. Completely different script. But is that my content? I don't even know. Like it's kind of crazy. Because I see the same video come out 100 times on YouTube now. And I'm like, man, did I just use ChatGPT to pull the script down and rewrite it? Like, it's insane. Like I can it's insane. Like I even help make me like different questions, come up with things, right? So copyright is gonna get real interesting in the next few years. I can just tell from all the books behind you, talking to you, the wealth of information that you have. I thought if I didn't ask this question, my audience would be upset. Could you recommend a few books or podcast that inspired you?
Well, as you may have guessed, I like to read. Although a lot of books you're seeing behind me are fiction, fantasy, sci-fi. So that's what I like to do in my
Mhm.
free time. So book recommendations. All right. So I would say it depends on the occasion.
Okay.
So there are some classics I think are my go-to for years.
Yeah.
So for examples, like every time I take on a new job, which I think happens about once every 5 years, I would
Yeah.
say. Um, I always read Michael Watkins' The First 90 Days. I think
Okay.
it's a great book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of common sense stuff, but the way he just puts it all together in a framework in terms of how to set yourself up for success
Yeah.
when you join a new job, and you're navigating through all this ambiguity and getting to know people. Love that book. Um, when it comes to, for instance, let's say people management,
Yeah.
book that has been hugely, two books, I would say, that have been hugely influential for my people management philosophy. One um, called Radical Candor by
Yeah.
Kim Scott. Um, Again, it's something that I fall back on so often that it feels like second nature to me now.
Yeah.
But the first time I heard her framework of why, especially as a leader, practicing radical candor and giving feedback in a timely way, in a direct way, is so important. When I first read it, it felt like an aha moment, especially because we're all so conditioned to be nice.
Yeah.
Uh, or, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. I mean, that's what we grew up with. And then you start to manage teams, and then you realize how important it is to give feedback. And the second book I would recommend is called First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham. And I think the many, many takeaways from that book, but the one takeaway that stayed with me till late is, again, when you're managing people, focus on somebody's strengths rather than, highlighting their gaps, right? Because that's where brilliance happens.
Those are great books. Super great. Had to write down some of the names just because I thought I gotta add this to my. I didn't read some of those books. If I had to add a few books I would add on there is when I first start a company or a new job, because I remember when I made the transition from a global product marketing manager at RSA Security, and then I went to a startup called Axoni as a director of product marketing. If I would have read this book beforehand, I think I would have did things a little bit different. What got me here won't get me there. Super
Love
cheesy,
it.
super
Yes,
cheesy book, but it was so many things that I realized that I was doing that made me successful in an individual contributor role. But
right.
now, when you're moving into a director role or a strategy first role, people leader role, certain things you got to do a little bit different. That it took me too long to figure out, that I would do a little bit different. Another book is something that always helps me, like even in the world of, I feel like it's 100 people have their own podcast, they have their own YouTube channel, they have way more degrees than me. How do I stay relevant? There's a book called The Purple Cow by Seth Godin. And it's pretty much just how to stay remarkable and how to stand out from the crowd. And, I realized that my background is unique. A lot of people don't do, like I talked about, marketing and IT. Some people not have the ability to simplify tech, right? And then who can talk about soft skills, who can do sales role, who can do a marketing role, and you find where you can win at, right? And then I found that you show up in places where there are few people like me, right? If I go to a product marketing, everyone's good at marketing. So my little bit of marketing skills don't help me there. But if I go to a tech role that needs sales, then now I'm a little bit more value there, right? It's like when I became a product, when I started doing more of a technical specialist role, everyone was good at security. So my security knowledge was just a commodity at the time. But what they needed me help with was understanding the business practices, understanding how to solve fraud, or working with insurance companies or working there. So telling your story in a unique way, or even me, women in tech, there ain't that many guys doing it, right? I didn't do it for that. It just happened to be when I get here, it's only me here, right? Doing it. That's for guys. Women have a ton of them, right? Again, showing up differently. So that's one thing. And then one thing that's helped me a lot is negotiation. And one book I would talk about is, anyone who knows me, is Never Settle for Less by Chris Voss. Man, one of my
No,
sales.
the book title is Never Split the Difference.
Oh, Never Split the Difference. There you go.
Yes,
Oh, Never Split the
I
Difference.
love that book.
That
Oh
book
man,
is amazing.
yeah.
Oh my God. Like I listened to master class and everything. I remember my sales rep when I was at my last job, Ingram Micro, told me about it. And it transformed the way I even negotiate with my kids. Because you guys, I got to negotiate with them sometimes, to the point now my daughter uses it to she told me the other day that isn't fair. That's not fair. Like, don't you want to get to a fair outcome? I'm like, fair outcome, you're 4 going on 5. That's not a fair outcome. I'm not giving you more ice cream before I'm done. But she's like, what if I clean up all my toys, brush my teeth, put on my pajamas, and I already got my 2 books ready? What about a little bit of ice cream now? I'm like, that's a fair proposition. You're gonna do these things anyway. But I like the fact that you kind of gave me this conversation. I took the deal, and man, she Chris Voss me, man. So
So
that book is really
she's
good.
already a master.
Yeah, it's crazy. The little girl, I'm like, hold on, I be catching myself. How is she negotiating me out of my own size? So this is great. But those are the things I love to talk about. I could talk to you all day, but get into the end. But this is probably the most important thing, because what I like to do with these podcasts is just an introduction to how amazing you already are. I know you got a great base already. So now the new people who reach out, how can my audience get in touch with you and follow the amazing work that you're doing?
Right. So I would say LinkedIn probably is the most effective way.
Okay.
Again, Sly, I don't know what your journey is. I think I'm less and less on social media
Yeah.
these days than I used to be.
Yeah.
The shine is definitely wearing off. But so I would say LinkedIn is probably the best and easiest way to get in touch with me.
Sweet. And that's fine. That's kind of same thing with the kids and everything. I have just enough time to get this stuff on there. And, I try to do these type of videos so people can reach me more, because I don't have that one-on-one time like I used to have. So I definitely understand. I can only imagine when the kids, I start taking them soccer practice and stuff, I probably even have less time there. So that's great. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
No, this has been so much fun, and I'm definitely going to check out The Purple Cow. It's not something I've read,
Yeah.
but fun conversation. Thank you again
Sweet.
for having me on.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, because I had fun. I definitely felt the chemistry with our talking. I felt like we dropped a lot of great gems. Make sure, if you're listening to this, like it, subscribe it, share it with a friend. If you're on YouTube, watch the other videos in the channel. Make sure you go on LinkedIn and follow both of us. And until next time, Sly Gittens out from Tech Simplified is out. Peace.